So welcome everyone. Nice to have everyone with us. And it sounds like we've got quite a few different time zones. So thank you for making the time, especially if it's really early for you. That's great. We're really thrilled to have you joining us today for our session about template review, and I guess a little bit about how to better understand it as a Canva creator. So first of all, my name is Paul. I'm with Canva, and I've been with Canva since November of last year. So I'm still kind of a newbie or a new hire in the space. But as I was mentioning to Gina, I'm actually in Calgary, Canada, so Mountain Standard Time. So it's about 1:30 in the afternoon my time. And I've, previous to joining Canva, I've worked in the licensing industry for some time. Kind of at photo sharing companies, and then most recently at a vector graphic design e-commerce platform. So have some experience with creators, certainly, and contributors, and the development of their content for various platforms. I think Pam was mentioning this, but I'll just say it again, kind of as a housekeeping item. So Pam and I will be kind of monitoring the chat and the QA panel, and we'll kind of do our best to answer any questions as they come up. So if you do have specific questions, definitely type those into the Q&A panel as you think of them, and then we'll try to get to as many of those questions as we can at the end of the session. We'll have a quick Q&A at the end where we can dive into some of that stuff. So, but yeah, if you've got comments or anything, drop those in the chat as normal. Just some of your burning questions, keep those into the Q&A panel if you can. Just make sure you don't have any problems kind of finding that. Cool. So first of all, I think today we're just going to be giving you some insights into template review, what it is, how it works, and we'll cover kind of what template reviewers do. Certainly want to help you guys understand that a little bit better, how the template review process works. So what happens after you submit your template. It's a bit of a black box, so we'll try to give you a little bit of insight into that. And then some of the things a template reviewer might look for as they inspect each of your submissions or templates. So the other thing I'll probably do is dive into kind of our top do's and don'ts, or things that we see that are most common that might be issues, and try to help you pass as many templates as you can through the review process and get them into the Canva template library. All right. So, but before we do that, I did want to just jump in quickly and kind of give you an overview of who Review is. So I'm the head of Review for creators. As I mentioned, I'm based in Canada. And we have the biggest concentration of our template reviewers, obviously in Sydney, Australia, where our home base is. But we also have template reviewers in Manila, Germany, Turkey, Brazil, Spain, the LATAM region, so specifically in Mexico right now, and that's expanding. And I think the one thing to keep in mind here is, as our creator market grows with more creators and more template submissions coming from global areas, we're going to try our best to make sure that we can establish local reviewers who can understand the language, obviously. But I think there's also some benefit to also having local reviewers who understand the culture and some of the nuances that come with living in that particular region. So something to keep in mind for us as we grow. So I think you guys probably have a good idea of what template review actually is, but for those of you who kind of want a quick refresher, this is how we think about template review. So there's obviously the quality assurance piece of this. There's the inspection of it. There's a little bit of fact checking that we do, and certainly sometimes fact checking might even mean spell checking and grammar and that kind of thing. And then finally, the review process is about feedback and how we get you feedback as creators so that you can improve your next submission, but also understand how you might be able to revise or amend your existing template so that you can get it through and published to the library. All right, so I thought I would give you a kind of a rundown of how the template flows through our system, so how the review process actually works. I will admit that this slide, as I was creating it, felt a little crazy. So hopefully it doesn't look too weird, but I thought I would just run you through quickly the steps after you click submit on a template. So one of the things to keep in mind when you submit a template is that those are kind of organized into different queues as they come into our system. So there's obviously a distinction that's made for templates when they are a certain royalty model, so either free or pro. So we have different queues for free and different queues for pro. But then there's also that language or locale component to it as well. So we might have separate queues for Portuguese. We might have separate queues for Spanish, but one Spanish might be for Latin America, another Spanish might be for Spain. So all of that is important to know, so that there are scenarios where you might submit multiple templates, one in English and one in your native language, and you might find that we have kind of different standards or different decisions are being made on each of those, and that's probably just because some of those templates can go into different areas, and it may not be the same reviewer who's always looking at your content. So now, once those go into the queue, the templates are reviewed by our review team. That was that group of people that I mentioned there who are based in 8 or 9 countries around the world. And they're scanning the template for a number of issues as they pertain to our review quality guidelines. So then once they've scanned that, the reviewers obviously have to make a decision whether or not they're going to pass or reject that content. And regardless of the decision, we always trigger an email to our creators to let them know what that decision was and where the template ended up. So I think all of you have had at least 1 or 2 templates pass, so you probably are familiar with this process. You get an email and the template is added to the Canva library, and it's also available on your creator profile page. Now, if a reviewer decides that we need to reject that file for whatever reason, there's a couple different scenarios here. There's a soft rejection, which means in some cases that particular template is only promoted to your profile page. So it's still available for people to find, but not as readily searchable or discoverable in the library. Or there's a hard rejection, which also means that it's not promoted to the library, and it's also not promoted to your creator profile. So those 2 scenarios are something to keep in mind as you get some of our emails relating to review. All right. So what are reviewers doing? Where do they spend their time, and how do they kind of remain focused on ensuring the library is kind of consistent? So one of the first things that our template reviewers do is inspect the content for kind of review quality guideline appropriateness. So we have baseline review, visual review, and kind of a usability component. Baseline being all of those very straightforward things like sensitive content, legal originality, that type of thing. Visual is just from an aesthetic perspective, and usability is whether or not that template is functional within the Canva tool, and all of the template elements and features work within the Canva tool properly and as they should. So we're obviously trying to keep things as consistent and fair as possible. So that's something that reviewers are always keeping in mind, how we can standardize the passes and the fails, those decisions that we make. And then ensuring that templates are also built correctly for our Canva users. And that kind of goes back to that usability piece, but this is super important. We don't want our Canva users to come across something that's broken or doesn't work. So that's super important for us to keep in mind as reviewers. And then there is a quality component to our library. So there are standards that we want to try to uphold, especially in certain areas. We want to make sure that we have competitive and exclusive content and things that make us unique from some of our competitors. And there's always, as well, the component of identifying where there might be modifications required for the template, and being sure to share that feedback with creators in a clear and concise way that helps you as creators understand what is potentially needed to change, or what might need to be updated the next time you submit a template. All right, so just quickly, what does a reviewer look for when they're scanning a template? So I've used this great example from Bruna. I'm not sure if Bruna's on the call or not, but and this isn't the full template. I think this is an animated template, but I kind of like this one. It's a little bit fun. So there's definitely a visual aesthetic component to review. So that's always something we scan for. But we're also looking for some of the key things that I've listed here. So potentially hurtful or sensitive content is a big one. There's the originality and intellectual property issues. And that's something that we recently introduced some guidelines around, and it's something that our reviewers are looking at more consistently and on an ongoing basis. There's inappropriate content templates with little to no commercial value, and that's kind of a big one. So I've set up a separate slide right after this one where we can talk about commercial value a little bit more. And then there's metadata issues, of course, and usability issues. Again, coming back to whether it's functional for the Canva tool and used and can be used in the way that the creator designed it to be used. So that commercial value one is important, and it's something that we get a lot of questions about from creators. So I thought I would touch on this just quickly. So one of the biggest things that we're thinking about when it comes to value is initially there's kind of the use case scenario. So is it clear what the template will be used for? That's important. There's the duplicate piece of this, and this has recently become an issue where we've seen a lot of resizes coming from some of our creators. And we like to kind of limit those resizes to 5 or less, essentially. And that's something I think Pam and the community team have communicated recently. But it's important for us to make sure that we have we don't have too many resizes floating around in our search. It kind of bogs down some of our search if you see a bunch of duplicated items like that. So there's an editability component to that, editability component. That's a tough word, apparently. But basically, does the design match the document type, and is it editable enough to be kind of considered a template? So that's super important. And reviewers, from a commercial value perspective, there is a consideration on the education side of it as well. So we consider that to be a specialty creator, essentially, but we want to make sure that the template follows appropriate guidelines based on who the creator is targeting or which specific creator group we're referring to. So I wanted to run through these kind of do's and don'ts quickly, and this is something that I think is kind of more of a participation slide for us. So in the chat specifically, we would love to hear of things that you might be doing on a regular basis that you always remember to do before you click submit on your template. I will hop through some of these that I have on here, but if you don't mind sharing in the chat, any of the participants here, just sharing a couple things that you always do before you submit your templates, that would be super helpful, I'm sure, for some of the other creators to understand some of the key things that you do each time before you submit a template. So one of the things that we obviously encourage you to do is check our review quality guidelines before submitting your template. So they are big guidelines, but we do suggest you do that as much as you can. Margie says to check bleeds if needed. That's super important. Just take a quick look at those edges. It's very important for sure. Roger says to always check text reflow before submitting. Great call. And yeah, check if there's any hidden duplicated elements, definitely. I think that's definitely something that is important. We also suggest, in some of those areas where you just test that template to make sure it's usable within the tool. Checking alignment, definitely super important, Heather. Obviously, there's the metadata component, and my good friend Karin, who is our design education lead, she recently ran a metadata seminar and webinar, which was ideal. So certainly something that is important, and it will definitely improve discoverability of your content and of your templates. So Margie, another good one, just to check for additional pages that are not needed. That can happen sometimes, and we'll see like an extra page that basically just looks like a duplicate or might even be blank. So, and the one thing I would say in addition to this is just try to consider any feedback that you may have received in the past. either before you submit, or even if you're resubmitting the template, of course, look at some of the feedback that's there, but that can also be super important. So thanks everyone for sharing those do's. I think those are super important, and definitely take notes if those are some of the things that you may not have considered as you submit your templates. So the don'ts are, I think, a little bit more straightforward and maybe a little too simplistic. I wrote, don't leave your metadata fields blank. I mean, yes, hopefully you don't do that, but we do still get some files that come in with titles that are essentially just the file name or something like that. And it can be something that we reject content over. So, but really, again, it's make sure to check for any feedback that you may have received, especially when you're resubmitting. Don't submit too many resizes. You know, we talked about that, but ideally, you know, we want to have less than five or less, essentially, resizes if possible. And this one, I hope this goes without saying, but certainly something I want to reiterate here is, you know, it is easy sometimes to see a template that already exists and to copy that and then try to tweak it a little bit for yourself. But the reality is we don't want anybody copying any creator templates. So be sure to kind of maintain your originality when submitting your work and avoid taking kind of liberal inspiration from other templates. That's not what we're here for. So thanks again for sharing in the chat, everyone. That was super helpful, and hopefully that helps some of our other creators out here. All right, so what are the most common issues the review team finds with submitted templates? So these are our top 5 issues that we end up seeing, and I won't touch on them too briefly, but I do just want to kind of just make a reminder here. I think that these are some things that still come up quite a bit. We're still pretty strict when it comes to trademark and copyright content. So this includes things like brands, logos, social media icons, or characters. So we definitely want to keep that in mind as you're submitting content. And I have a little exercise or quiz at the end for everyone. And there's an example in there that kind of features trademark copyright. And so we can see a visual example of that here in the next few slides. The next thing is real world data, which actually we do still see quite a bit of contact information or details that are either not safe to use because it could actually be personal data, or it doesn't kind of match with some of the names that we've developed or the business names that we've said are safe to use in templates. So again, our design education team has developed some really great materials that have I believe a set of at least 100 names that are safe to use in all templates, as well as a number of business names and addresses and that type of thing. So it's certainly important to reference that before you submit your template. The other items that are still coming up quite often are just related to usability. And so these are some of the things, either from an alignment perspective, some of you were mentioning, as well as just generally making sure that some of your text boxes don't extend all the way off the page. From a spelling, grammar, punctuation perspective, we're still seeing a lot of misspelled words and missing punctuation in some cases. You know, we're not probably as strict as we could be on some of this stuff, but at the same time, it's always important to check that before you submit. And finally, there is still a little bit of kind of stacking and hiding that we see with elements, or even with text that ends up being buried behind an element or something like that. So it's just a gentle reminder, and it's still something we see kind of in our top 5 rejected reasons, something that we'd love for you guys to address if you can. So, all right, and one of the things here that I just want to make clear is, of course, we've got our review quality guidelines, but we also have recently introduced kind of a form that anyone can submit an inquiry to our support team related to review. And that is certainly your best way to get feedback and or information about one of the submissions that you've sent in. So our reviewers, you know, each individual reviewer doesn't necessarily take the time to dive into individual feedback, but at the same time, we have a core group who can answer all of those questions for our support team and liaise with those individuals to make sure that we find the appropriate answer and resolution for you if you're submitting any sort of request through the support forms. So would definitely encourage you to continue to do that. And yeah, that's something that obviously the reviewers are focused on ensuring everyone's submissions are reviewed in a timely manner, and we don't always have the time to necessarily reply individually, each reviewer connecting with each creator, but that's something we triage through our support team, and then we have a core group of reviewers who can handle some of those things. And thanks, Pam, for sharing that link in the chat there. That's great. All right, so this is the part I was talking about, the quiz, or it's more so just be a reviewer for a day. So we'd love for you to share some of your answers in the chat based on some of these examples. What I'm kind of outlining for you here is some design examples, and then we're asking you to decide whether the template would pass the review process or would be rejected by a reviewer based on one specific criteria. So because we have so many different things that we're looking at, as we mentioned, we're just going to focus each decision on one specific review criteria. So in this first case, we just want to consider, does the template pass or fail our inappropriate content requirements? So, and just as a reminder for inappropriate content requirements, this is essentially, these are the main things we're looking for as reviewers. For inappropriate content, we're looking for incorrect, incomplete, or not safe to use copy or text, or any sort of brand or individual promotion. So this is something that we were just referencing. So, all right, so again, so answer in the chat if this template would pass or be rejected based on the inappropriate criteria. So Pam, you're saying yes, this is passing? Or just yes, you would love to be a reviewer for a day?
This is not passing, Paul. I know that one.
Oh, okay.
I just would love to be a reviewer for a day.
Oh, sorry, I saw a yes. Hey, we're happy to have you over. So I think everyone's nailing this one, and you're right. So essentially, this one sadly is not going to make the cut. So templates that contain any sort of names or business names that are recognizable, and this is what I was talking about, that real world scenario. We just can't have that in the library, unfortunately. So Sephora, that's right, it's a beauty brand, and we need to go back to the creator for an update to the design before it could be resubmitted. So, all right, so far everyone's nailing this. This is good. I didn't make these too hard, but at the same time, it's good to see that everybody's on the same page. All right, so this is the same scenario. So essentially, we're talking about inappropriate content here, whether or not this should be passed. So does this have incomplete or not safe to use copy and text, or brand promotion or individual promotion, like an Instagram handle, a personal website, a link? All right, Pam's saying yes. Anna says yes. Louise says yes. I think we're all on the right track. You're correct. That's right. So templates that contain details, names, and information that are safe to use. So in this case, at Really Great Site is the kind of Instagram handle or Twitter handle there, plus the website, www.reallyGreatSite.com. Those are all approved and follow our template copy requirements to a T. So great job, everyone. If we are hiring, we'll let you know. Maybe we can get you in there, Pam. Okay, the next one we'll just go through is related to metadata. So this should be fresh in your minds because Karin just did her wonderful webinar. So metadata requirements, just quickly again, we're looking for things like incorrect labeling, too few keywords, or poorly constructed titles, lowercase title, etc. So let's have a quick look here. We've got a title and some keywords and a lovely design. So does this contain incorrect labeling, too few keywords, or any poorly constructed titles? Let us know if this passes or fails. Alka says yes. Pam says yes. Gina, yes.
I'm not sure about the logo at the top, Paul.
Pack Design Co.
Yeah. Is that okay?
I believe it's part of our approved. And I think everybody got it.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so I think the key thing here, and this is something that Karin touched on in our last webinar, is the title is concise and follows the format that we have. And obviously the keywords are fairly relevant. And there's a good amount of them as well. So great job, everyone. All right, next up, maybe these are a little too easy. I should have picked some harder ones, Pam. So is there any incorrect labeling, too few keywords, or poorly constructed titles? Capitalizing keywords, yes, that's right, Anne. Great catch. Title definitely has an issue. Best, agree. Yeah, best is not the most descriptive keyword. Trying to avoid things like that. That's right. So yeah, the title is, I think, probably a bit too long. There is the actual title case in the sense that green is not capitalized, or some of the other letters, words. And there's only 4 keywords. And I think one of the biggest things is that we still do see is these types of keywords here, creative Instagram post. It looks more like a hashtag than an actual keyword. And those are things we try to avoid, just because there's a really small chance that someone's going to be able to find this based on that particular keyword. So great job, everyone.
And that's the thing, right, Paul? It just hurts the template as well, because then you wouldn't come
from
up.
A discoverability perspective. Yeah, definitely. So and we definitely try to catch those in review. We're not going to catch everything. Every single keyword is very hard to scan, but it certainly doesn't help from a discoverability standpoint. And yeah, someone mentioned best. It's true that some of those other things, there's you could put the greatest or best. Those are really more subjective terms and less descriptive terms. And we're trying to help our users, Canva users, find the content, not necessarily, we don't want people promoting their template as the best or the greatest, even though it might be. I mean, who's to say at this point, but it's still important not to use those types of keywords. So
awesome.
All right, and then the last one is for sensitive content. And I will just say, I didn't pick anything that was, triggering or anything like that. This is a very, very simple one. So very basic, but essentially in these particular examples, the reviewers are really looking for any sort of political partiality or medical or safety advice. And those are still things that we consider to be a bit sensitive. There are things that we obviously don't want on the templates from a medical claims perspective or something like that. And Canva also doesn't really like to take have templates that kind of take a political stance in one way or the other. So trying to stay a bit neutral when it comes to some of our templates. So in these examples, is there any political impartiality or medical or safety advice that might hinder us from accepting this into the collection? Let us know if this would pass or fail based on those 2 criteria of sensitive content: political impartiality or medical or safety advice.
Ooh, that seems to be a tricky one.
We've got some debate here. That's good. And I guess it could depend on the region as well. But for the most part, this particular one is I guess generic enough, or we feel that it's generic enough because of the message: use your vote for change. It doesn't necessarily lean towards one side or the other from a political perspective. And so we would probably consider this acceptable. Based on the criteria, a reviewer looks for, the theme or the message is generic enough that it doesn't necessarily depict a bias or take a side in a political debate. And that's really what we're looking for from a political impartiality or partiality standpoint. So in this scenario here, again, we're just looking for any political impartiality or medical or safety advice. Does this pass or fail based on some of that criteria? I think I agree with everybody here. It's definitely a big no. And the reason for that is, what we're dealing with here is a bit of a one-sided, political poster where Mr. Smith is not looking kindly on Mr. Whitman, and that's unfortunate. So based on the criteria reviewer looks for, and also some of the colors, nobody likes the colors, good to know. This template's theme or message is a bit too one-sided and attempts to kind of persuade someone, one way or the other. So. Great. I think that's a wrap on some of those things. So, always appreciate some of the interaction, and thanks again for diving into some of those decisions for us and being a reviewer for a day. So hopefully you found something useful there. I think we'll open things up for questions now, and that's where we have our Q&A panel. And then I'll try my best to kind of dive into some of those questions and answer as many as I can.
Well, we do have one from Margie there, if you want to have a look.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, Margie's asking, I recently had a template promoted to the library, but there was no activity on it, and I can't find it no matter how I search. Is it possible templates get stuck and need to be published again? We do clear out our queues, and so I mean, that might be something related to support, but Margie, I did maybe want to ask a follow-up question. Is that something, is that a template that you know and can identify quite easily, or is it is something that's just sort of kind of lost to you now? You're not really sure where it's at. Oh, okay. So Margie, it is on your profile, but not in the library. So were you saying that initially it was in the library, but then it went to your profile and there was no communication around that? Gotcha. And so, and Faith also had a question about what happens to templates sent to profile only. And so these might be two related things, I'm not sure, but yeah, when something is sent to the profile only, that means it's not discoverable in the larger library search. So if you're in the tool itself and you're searching for templates, you wouldn't necessarily be able to discover it there. Or if you're in just a general search on canva.com/templates, it also wouldn't be discoverable there. Would only be available if somebody landed on your profile and then looked through your profile and found the template. And why are they sent to profile only? In some cases, that's what I was referring to as a soft rejection. So essentially, a soft rejection means that it's not appropriate for the library, but it can still be available as a design. And there are scenarios where you can update or make changes to the soft rejections based on our feedback and then resubmit it. And in that case, it might be considered for the broader Canva library after that.
Is that clear, guys? Do you have any other questions?
Oh, Margie's just asking, wouldn't it say profile only if it was profile only? Yeah, it should be defined clearly. And in the feedback email that you get, it should also refer to it being promoted to your profile.
Oh yes, Jenna asked about resizing. So she submitted 3 templates, but just one size was accepted.
Okay. And in that scenario, were all of those in the same language?
Yeah, so let me read her question. I want to have a blog images and Pinterest and Instagram matching. So they part of a collection, but they have been rejected in the past with only one size being accepted.
Gotcha. Okay. And it sounds like they're all the same language. And that was something that I touched on at the beginning, was that in some scenarios where you might submit one in English and submit another in a different language, there could be the potential that a different reviewer probably looks at it. But it's also that scenario where because we have so many reviewers, it might not be the same reviewer ultimately looking at all of the files together. So the way that our system works, we can group some of those templates, all of the resizes together, but it's not always, our system doesn't always default to group everything together. So it could be that someone submits 25 templates all at once, but 20 of those are reviewed by one person and 5 are reviewed by someone else. So different individuals might have different decision making.
One thing that I learned this week as well, Paul, on the back of that question, is when a creator use a template and just kind of duplicates it to create a different doc type.
Yep, clicks the little magic resize button.
Yes, that sometimes doesn't actually work for how it's displayed, how the template actually is laid out. So if you
that's right. So
submit it, then it would still be out of alignment potentially, or things like that.
The space could be strange, like negative space could be impacted because it just replicates it on the new document size. So it is important for creators to kind of move the elements around or resize them or resize the text if necessary to fit the new doc type, right? So
yes, absolutely.
Like
so that could be a reason as well, right?
That could be a scenario like that as well, where I think what Jean is probably talking about is, and she mentioned it there, she resizes and she redesigns. So that probably isn't that scenario. So, but what I would encourage Gina to do is connect with our support team and send them a message about the 2 that were not accepted, and we can always take a second look at those and make sure that they get a second set of eyes. Okay, so in the Q&A panel, because I think we're getting some questions thrown into the chat as well. So just remember to put those into the Q&A panel. I've got another one here. So saw some templates promoted in the library with a lot of grammar errors. Why are they promoted in the library? So okay, and so I assume we're talking about grammar errors being related to, could be non-native English speakers who are creating English templates. Is that a scenario that sounds familiar, or is it something just related to just general grammar, I guess? So one of the things that we often see with our submissions is like just because of the volume that we get of content is, we're trying our best to review metadata, titles, and keywords. We're also trying our best to review the actual text within the template, but these are things that can also be missed depending on how much content we're trying to review in a given day. For Faith, a question on keywords. When Karen spoke to us last time, she suggested we avoid giving space in keywords. Example, Instagram post instead of Instagram post. But I heard you speak against that today. Yeah, no, definitely. I'm not sure that we would accept a keyword if it said Instagram post, all one word. So it's something that we are not currently accepting from a review perspective. So I'd have to check with Karen on that, but I think that's certainly something we wouldn't want to encourage creators to submit. Like that particular keyword could still be created. Instagram post could still be a single keyword. But we wouldn't want the space, we would want a space between Instagram and post. But
I think that's what Karen mentioned on her webinar, is that um, it can be a keyword, but it needs that space in between,
Okay,
as opposed to just having as one single word.
gotcha. Okay. Okay, gotcha. All right. And then another question in the Q&A panel is related to, let's see here. Found some templates whose content consisted of just one element without editing or adding text or other elements. Where did that go? Is this allowed? So yeah, so kind of similar to almost like vector art, really. And we try our best to catch that content because you're right, I mean, we do have creators who both submit elements and templates. So ideally, that content is probably submitted via our elements queues as opposed to our template queues. So we do ask that, this goes back to kind of that visual aesthetic or that use case scenario where it feels like a template and kind of looks like it's a useful template in the grand scheme of things. So Heather would like to know how many templates are submitted on an average every day, the scale of the creator program worldwide. So I don't know how much detail we can get into on kind of the overall scale of things, but Pam, have you had any questions before related to like some of our general numbers? Like how much detail do you guys get into from like a competitive kind of confidentiality perspective? It's the question from Heather there, Pam. Just in the Q&A panel. I mean, I guess I would say thousands. I can say that much at least. We certainly receive thousands of templates submitted every day. So,
Yeah, I don't think we can even give a final answer to that.
Yeah, it's a bit confidential, but we'll just say thousands for the time being.
It varies so much as well.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, Heather, we couldn't give you a few more details on that. So, Helen, so will we ever be able to get more detail about why a template was soft rejected for quality reasons? I know reviewers are very busy, but as a new creator, I would like to know what I'm doing wrong. Yeah, so in that scenario where it's soft rejected for quality reasons, is the quality specific to just like the visual quality, I guess? I know that it is a little difficult to give visual feedback in some of these scenarios. So I think at this point in time, just because of the sheer volume of content that we're getting, it isn't always easy to give specific feedback on the visual decision making. But what I will say is with some of the introductions that we hope to roll out soon around kind of a scaled back version of review called low touch review, there isn't as much emphasis put on the visual component. And so that is more up to the Canva user to kind of determine the impact or the relevance of each template. So from a review perspective, we might not be weighting that visual aesthetic nearly as much in the low touch review process. So, but I agree, Helen, that's a little bit challenging when you have, when you're just getting started and you don't always get that information about the visual quality piece. Okay, someone is super keen on the grammar and misspelled words. So would you do a cleanup of the library of the templates with wrong grammar, misspelled words, or just keep it there? Yeah, we do actually do regular cleanups each season or each quarter. And so there are a number of things that we obviously look for, and there are some proactive measures that we take from a cleanup perspective. I would also say that we have a reported template feature, which is a newer feature. So if you did happen to see something that you thought was egregious, mostly our Canva users are the ones who use the report a template feature, but if you happen to see something in your travels, I'm sure you can report that template as well. So, Gina, are you our reviewer for us Western people? So we have English cues that are handled mainly by our Sydney team. We do have one other reviewer in North America, and we're probably going to develop that team a little bit further. But for now, it's kind of a mix of our Sydney team and also our team in Manila. So, good question,
Just
Gina.
clarifying as well, Gina, Poe actually organizes and manages all the teams that we have globally. So can give us a lot of insights.
So I don't review templates on a daily basis, but certainly if Pam decides she wants to do some review for the day, then the two of us will definitely jump in and do it. So. Anna, we don't have a Polish team right now. We have some reviewers in Germany that might be the closest to you, and so that's how the team is made up at this point. Did we miss Tamara's? I think we want to jump back to that one. So Tamara was asking, what determines where a template ranks when users search? Is it a number of downloads, keywords, etc.? Just wondering if a template created months or even eventually years ago could still rank highly if the design resonates well with users. Great question. I am not the search expert, sadly. So there's a few things that obviously impact search, but one of them is kind of like the historical performance of the template itself. So there is obviously the number of exports or the number of publishes. That information will have an impact on where that template shows up in our search results. But there is also a recency component. So, but if the template has performed well and has been impactful over time, it'll still continue to kind of surface high in search results. But it's a good question, maybe something, Pam, we can talk about at some point down the road in a future webinar, is kind of how things are discoverable and where they sit in the search.
Search is a very
metadata,
very hot topic. Yes.
Okay.
We're sharing more and more on what the users are actually looking for, and on the back of that, even the hot opportunities content that we've been sharing with you this week, last week, is based on search. But we're definitely working with the search team a bit more, and hopefully we'll be able to get someone to come and do a webinar specifically on search as well.
So I'll be attending that one for sure.
Yeah. So we're inviting lots of special guests. So Tony will be joining me very soon to talk about payments. Then we have Tintin joining us about elements, that metadata. We haven't announced that one yet, but I will this week, which is super exciting. So I will definitely add search to the list. So I know that you guys want to know more about it. So I'll keep you posted.
Okay, so Faith has a question. I've seen templates lately in the library with generic text, like add your title here, kind of like placeholder text. I remember when starting out, my templates were rejected for that. Is this something that is no longer a problem to the review team? No, ideally we still have kind of that in-use look to the template. And so ideally the text, and that's sort of why in the scenarios that we were looking at where you're kind of being a reviewer for a day, we were looking at those scenarios and thinking to ourselves, what is the type of text that is acceptable? There are certain names that we would accept and certain business names, essentially things that make those templates look a little bit more in use. And so again, if there's something like that, we definitely would try to at least soft reject those if it says something like add your title here. Placeholder text is something that we do try to discourage a little bit, but it may not be something that we can catch every single time. good question, Faith.
Amazing. Any other questions, guys? Have we missed anything on the chat? I don't think so. I've been keeping an eye on it. Awesome. Paul, I might have a couple of questions for you if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
At the beginning of the presentation, we saw a photo of you having pancakes. Is that your favorite breakfast?
Well, breakfast is my favorite meal of the day. So I guess, yeah, and pancakes is certainly one of my favorite breakfasts, definitely. Like quite large stack, like 3 to 4 minimum. So not just a single flapjack or something like that. It's true.
Amazing. Thanks for that. I just thought it would be nice to get to know more of you. Thank you so much for actually doing this for us. It's really amazing to have you here, and we're very
Thanks for having me.
The time to hang out with us, talk to us about the reviews. I hope you guys in the call found this very useful. I certainly did. I just saw that there's another question there from Louise. I think we still have a bit of more time for that if you want to read that one, Paul.
Oh, yes, sorry. Can you explain what quote templates are? What can be accepted and what not to use? So yeah, we did have kind of a recent change to quotes. And I think it's related to our change in royalties for free content. So free templates are now paid, or at least they can incur royalties back to the creator. And so we felt like attributed quotes could no longer be used in our free templates. So essentially, we have some acceptable use quotes, and the rest of those quotes we want to try to avoid as much as possible. So I believe that list is in our copy requirements guidelines document, the ones that are acceptable to use, and what to avoid as well. So. Great question about that.
Anyone else? Last chance, last calls for questions. No?
But yeah, our support team can certainly triage any of those additional questions that you might have, and they'll get them in front of a reviewer. Some of our more experienced reviewers will be able to answer those and help you understand a little bit better about what's happened. And as I was mentioning, there is a low touch review kind of change coming for some of our review workflows that I think Pam has been kind of socializing more broadly with creators. And that is something that we'll be introducing in the coming weeks and months. So look out for that soon.
And thank you so much. Thanks, Paul. Is there anything else that you'd like to say before you leave us?
No, it's great. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. And all the best on your creative journey. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Bye.